The sun was setting over the small, dusty town of Frontier's Edge, casting long shadows across Jake's garage. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, a familiar comfort to Jake as he wiped his hands on a grease-stained rag. It had been a long day of fixing hoverbikes and tuning engines, and he was ready to call it a night. Just as he was about to lock up, the comm unit on his workbench buzzed to life. Jake hesitated. Calls this late usually meant trouble, someone stranded on the outskirts of town or a malfunctioning piece of equipment that couldn't wait until morning. With a sigh, he picked up the receiver. Jake's garage. What's the problem? The voice that responded was unlike anything he'd ever heard. It was smooth and melodic, with an otherworldly quality that sent a shiver down his spine. Hello, Jake. My name is Sarah. I need your help. Jake frowned. With what? My ship, she said simply. It's broken down, and I was told you're the best mechanic in this sector. Jake raised an eyebrow. Your ship? What kind of ship are we talking about? There was a pause, as if she were choosing her words carefully. It's complicated. I can explain more when you arrive. I'll send you the coordinates. Before Jake could respond, the comm unit beeped, and a set of coordinates appeared on the screen. He stared at them for a moment, his curiosity piqued. Something about this woman, about her voice, felt different. It wasn't just the accent, though that was unusual enough. There was a weight to her words, a sense of urgency that he couldn't ignore. All right, he said finally. I'll be there. The coordinates led him to a remote area on the outskirts of town, where the desert stretched out in endless waves of sand and rock. As he approached, he saw it, a sleek, silver spacecraft unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was smaller than most cargo ships, with smooth, flowing lines that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The surface of the ship shimmered faintly, as if it were alive. Jake parked his hoverbike a safe distance away and approached cautiously. As he got closer, he noticed a figure standing near the ship's entrance. It was a woman, Sarah. She was breathtaking. Her skin had a faint golden hue that seemed to glow in the fading light, and her hair flowed around her like liquid starlight. Her eyes, large and luminous, locked onto his, and for a moment, Jake forgot how to breathe. You must be Jake, she said, her voice as mesmerizing as it had been over the comm. Thank you for coming. Jake nodded, trying to regain his composure. Yeah, no problem. So, what's wrong with your ship? Sarah gestured toward the vessel. The propulsion system has malfunctioned. I've tried to repair it myself, but I lack the necessary expertise. I was told you're the best. Jake couldn't help but smile at that. Well, I don't know about the best, but I'll do what I can. Mind if I take a look? Sarah nodded and led him inside. The interior of the ship was just as impressive as the exterior, with smooth, organic surfaces and glowing panels that responded to their presence. Jake felt like he'd stepped into a dream. As they reached the engine room, Jake got to work. He ran diagnostics, checked connections, and examined the propulsion system. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen, but he was determined to figure it out. As he worked, Sarah watched him intently, her presence both comforting and unnerving. So, Jake said after a while, breaking the silence. Where are you from? Sarah hesitated. A place very far from here. My planet is dying. I'm on a mission to save it. Jake looked up, surprised. That's a big responsibility. What kind of mission? Sarah's expression grew serious. I'm carrying something very important, a relic known as the Starborn Crystal. It has the power to restore life to my world, but it's also highly sought after. There are those who would do anything to take it from me. Jake frowned. Sounds dangerous. It is, Sarah admitted. But I have no choice. My people are counting on me. Jake nodded, feeling a newfound respect for her. Well, I'll do my best to get you back on your way. As the hours passed, Jake and Sarah worked together, their conversation flowing easily despite the strange circumstances. Jake found himself drawn to her, not just because of her beauty, but because of her strength and determination. There was something about her that made him want to protect her, to help her succeed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jake found the problem, a faulty energy conduit that had been damaged during the ship's last jump. It was a tricky fix, but with Sarah's help, he managed to repair it. That should do it, Jake said, stepping back to admire his work. Try firing it up. Sarah activated the propulsion system, and the ship hummed to life. A smile spread across her face, and for the first time, Jake saw her relax. "Thank you, Jake," she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Jake shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just doing my job." Sarah studied him for a moment, her luminous eyes searching his. "You're more than just a mechanic, Jake. I can see it in you, the potential for greatness." Jake wasn't sure how to respond to that, but before he could say anything, the ship sensors beeped urgently. Sarah's expression turned serious as she checked the readings. "We have company," she said grimly. "Draxon's forces. They've found us." Jake's heart raced. "What do we do?" Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "We fight." The ship's alarms blared as Jake and Sarah rushed to the control room. The holographic display showed 3 sleek, black ships closing in fast, their weapon systems glowing ominously. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He was a mechanic, not a soldier, but he couldn't let Sarah face this alone. "What's the plan?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Sarah's fingers flew across the control panel, her movements precise and confident. "We can't outrun them, but we might be able to outmaneuver them. Hold on." Before Jake could respond, the ship lurched forward, accelerating at an incredible speed. The force pinned him to his seat as Sarah expertly navigated through the asteroid field that surrounded them. The black ships followed, their pilots skilled but not as agile as Sarah. "Who are these guys?" Jake shouted over the roar of the engines. "Draxon's mercenaries," Sarah replied, her eyes never leaving the display. "They've been hunting me since I left my planet. They want the starborn crystal." Jake gripped the armrests of his seat as the ship narrowly avoided a massive asteroid. "Why? What's so special about this crystal?" Sarah hesitated, her expression conflicted. "It's not just a source of energy. It's alive. It responds to emotions, to bonds between beings. In the right hands, it can heal worlds. In the wrong hands, it can destroy them." Jake's eyes widened. "And Draxon wants it for himself?" Sarah nodded. "He believes it will make him unstoppable. But he doesn't understand its true nature. The crystal can't be controlled by force, it requires a connection, a bond of trust and love." Jake didn't have time to process this as the ship shuddered under a direct hit. The lights flickered, and the holographic display wavered. "They've locked onto us," Sarah warned. "We need to lose them, or we're finished." Jake's mind raced. He wasn't a pilot, but he knew machines. "Can you reroute power to the engines? If we overload them, we might be able to make a short jump." Sarah's eyes lit up. "That could work. But it's risky, we could burn out the entire system." "Do we have a choice?" Jake asked, glancing at the display. The black ships were gaining fast. Sarah nodded and began rerouting power. The ship's engines roared as they surged forward, the force pressing Jake deeper into his seat. The asteroid field blurred around them as they approached the edge of the system. "Ready?" Sarah asked, her hand hovering over the jump controls. Jake took a deep breath. "Ready." With a flash of light, the ship jumped into hyperspace, leaving the black ships far behind. The sudden silence was deafening as the engines powered down, the ship drifting in the vast emptiness of space. Jake let out a shaky breath. Did we lose them? Sarah checked the sensors. For now. But they'll find us again. Draxon won't stop until he has the crystal. Jake turned to her, his expression serious. Then we need to make sure he never gets it. What's our next move? Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. There's a safe haven, a hidden outpost where we can regroup and plan our next steps. But it's deep in uncharted territory. It won't be easy to get there. Jake nodded. Then we'd better get started. As they set a course for the outpost, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was just beginning. The stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined, and he was in way over his head. But as he glanced at Sarah, her golden skin glowing softly in the dim light of the ship, he knew he wouldn't trade this for anything. The journey to the hidden outpost took several days, and during that time, Jake and Sarah grew closer. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of their lives and dreams. Jake learned about Sarah's world, a planet once vibrant and full of life, now slowly dying due to a mysterious energy crisis. He also learned about the starborn crystal, its origins, and the ancient prophecy that foretold its power. The crystal is more than just a tool, Sarah explained one evening as they sat in the ship's observation deck, the stars stretching out before them. It's a living entity, born from the heart of a dying star. It chooses who can wield its power, and it responds to the strength of their bond. Jake frowned. So it's not just about having the crystal. It's about proving you're worthy? Sarah nodded. Exactly. That's why Draxon can never truly control it. He seeks power for himself, not for the good of others. Jake was silent for a moment, processing this. And you? Why did the crystal choose you? Sarah smiled softly. Because I'm willing to sacrifice everything for my people. And because, she hesitated, her eyes meeting his. Because I believe in the power of connection. Of love. Jake felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He didn't know what to say, but he didn't need to. The look in Sarah's eyes said it all. Their moment was interrupted by the ship's sensors, which began beeping urgently. Sarah rushed to the control panel, her expression tense. We're being tracked, she said, her voice tight. Draxon's forces have found us again. Jake's heart sank. How? We've been careful. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the readings. They must have planted a tracker on the ship when they attacked us. We need to find it and disable it, or we'll never shake them. Jake nodded, already moving toward the engine room. I'll take care of it. You keep us on course. As Jake worked to locate and disable the tracker, he couldn't help but think about what Sarah had said. The crystal responded to bonds of trust and love. Did that mean his growing feelings for her could somehow influence its power? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Finally, after what felt like hours, Jake found the tracker, a small, black device hidden deep within the ship's systems. He disabled it just as the ship entered the uncharted territory where the hidden outpost was located. We're here, Sarah announced as the ship approached a massive asteroid. To Jake's surprise, the asteroid began to shift, revealing a hidden docking bay. Welcome to Sanctuary, Sarah said with a smile. The hidden outpost, known as Sanctuary, was a marvel of engineering and secrecy. Nestled deep within a massive asteroid, it was invisible to scanners and protected by a series of advanced cloaking devices. As Jake and Sarah stepped off their ship, they were greeted by a group of rebels, men and women from various worlds who had banded together to fight against Draxon's tyranny. Their leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Corin, approached with a warm smile. Sarah, it's good to see you. And this must be Jake. Jake shook Corin's hand, noting the strength in his grip. Nice to meet you. Sarah's told me a lot about this place. Corin nodded. We've been expecting you. Come, let's get you settled. As they walked through the outpost, Jake was struck by the sense of camaraderie among the rebels. Despite the danger they faced, there was an air of hope and determination. Sarah explained that Sanctuary was more than just a hideout, it was a symbol of resistance, a place where those who opposed Draxon could find refuge and strength. Over the next few days, Jake and Sarah worked with the rebels to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with Draxon. They trained, strategized, and shared stories of their journeys. Jake found himself growing closer to the rebels, inspired by their courage and resilience. But their peace was short-lived. One evening, as they gathered in the command center, the alarms blared. "Incoming ships," one of the rebels shouted, her eyes glued to the holographic display. "It's Draxon's fleet." Sarah's expression turned grim. "They've found us." Corrin stepped forward, his voice steady. "We knew this day would come. It's time to fight." The outpost sprang into action as the rebels prepared for battle. Jake and Sarah joined Corrin in the command center, where they watched as Draxon's fleet approached. The black ships were sleek and menacing, their weapons systems glowing ominously. "We can't let them reach the outpost," Sarah said, her voice tight with urgency. "If they breach our defenses, it's over." Corrin nodded. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. But we need a plan." Jake's mind raced. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew machines. "What if we use the asteroid field to our advantage? We could set up a series of traps, mines, EMP bursts, anything to slow them down." Sarah's eyes lit up. "And if we can disable their flagship, we might be able to cripple their entire fleet." Corrin smiled. "I like the way you think. Let's make it happen." The rebels worked tirelessly to set up the traps, using every resource at their disposal. Jake and Sarah focused on the EMP bursts, rigging them to detonate at key points in the asteroid field. As they worked, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He was no longer just a mechanic, he was part of something bigger. When Draxon's fleet entered the asteroid field, the traps were ready. The first wave of ships triggered the mines, their hulls buckling under the force of the explosions. The EMP bursts followed, disabling several ships and causing chaos among the fleet. But Draxon's flagship, a massive, heavily armored vessel, pressed on. "We need to take out that ship," Corrin said, his voice tense. "If it reaches the outpost, we're finished." Sarah nodded. "Jake and I will handle it. We'll take a small team and infiltrate the flagship." Corrin hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful. We'll cover you from here." As Jake and Sarah prepared to leave, Corrin placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "Take care of her. She's more important than you know." Jake nodded, his resolve firm. "I will." The infiltration. The journey to Draxon's flagship was fraught with danger. Jake, Sarah, and a small team of rebels navigated through the asteroid field, using the chaos of the battle to their advantage. As they approached the flagship, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The ship was massive, its dark hull bristling with weapons and defenses. "How do we get inside?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah smiled. "Leave that to me." She activated a small device on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared, showing the ship's schematics. "There's a maintenance hatch here," she said, pointing to a spot on the hull. "If we can reach it, we can bypass their security systems." The team moved quickly, using their jetpacks to navigate the ship's exterior. When they reached the hatch, Jake got to work, using his tools to bypass the locking mechanism. Within minutes, they were inside. The interior of the flagship was dark and foreboding, the walls lined with glowing panels and strange, alien symbols. The team moved cautiously, avoiding patrols and security drones. As they made their way to the ship's core, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. Sarah nodded. "Draxon's influence is everywhere. We need to stay focused." When they reached the core, they were met with a shocking sight, Draxon himself, standing before a massive, glowing crystal. It was similar to the starborn crystal, but darker, more menacing. "Sarah," Draxon said, his voice cold and calculating. "I've been expecting you." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes blazing with defiance. "It's over, Draxon. Your reign of terror ends here." Draxon laughed, a sound that sent chills down Jake's spine. "You think you can stop me? You're nothing but a child playing at being a hero." Jake stepped forward, his voice steady. "She's not alone." Draxon's eyes narrowed as he studied Jake. "And who are you?" "Another fool who thinks he can challenge me." "I'm the guy who's going to shut you down," Jake replied, his hand tightening around his tool. Draxon smirked. "We'll see about that." The battle. The battle that followed was intense. Draxon's guards attacked with ruthless efficiency, forcing Jake and Sarah to fight for their lives. The rebels fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. As the battle raged, Jake and Sarah made their way to the core, where Draxon was attempting to activate the dark crystal. "We need to stop him," Sarah said, her voice filled with urgency. "If he activates that crystal, it's over." Jake nodded, his mind racing. "I'll distract him. You take care of the crystal." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful." Jake charged at Draxon, using his tools to create a diversion. Draxon laughed, easily deflecting Jake's attacks. "You're out of your depth, boy," he sneered. But Jake didn't back down. He fought with everything he had, using his knowledge of machines to outmaneuver Draxon. As they battled, Sarah worked to disable the dark crystal, her hands moving quickly over the control panel. Finally, with a surge of energy, the crystal began to destabilize. Draxon's eyes widened in panic. "What have you done?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice filled with determination. "I've stopped you, Draxon. It's over." Draxon roared in fury, charging at Sarah. But before he could reach her, Jake tackled him, sending them both crashing to the ground. "You'll pay for this," Draxon snarled, his eyes filled with rage. Jake didn't respond. With a final, desperate effort, he activated an EMP device, sending a shockwave through the ship. The dark crystal exploded, its energy surging through the flagship. As the ship began to collapse around them, Jake and Sarah made their escape, dragging the unconscious Draxon with them. They reached their ship just as the flagship exploded, the force of the blast sending them hurtling through space. The aftermath. Back at Sanctuary, the rebels celebrated their victory. Draxon was defeated, his fleet in disarray. The outpost was safe, and the galaxy was free from his tyranny. As Jake and Sarah stood together, watching the stars, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "We did. Thanks to you." Jake shook his head. "Thanks to us. We're a team, remember?" Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "Always." As they stood there, hand in hand, Jake knew that their journey was far from over. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The victory over Draxon was a turning point, not just for Jake and Sarah, but for the entire galaxy. With Draxon's fleet destroyed and his reign of terror brought to an end, the rebels at Sanctuary began to spread the word of their triumph. Planets that had lived in fear of Draxon's tyranny now dared to hope for a brighter future. For Jake and Sarah, the days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. They worked with Corrin and the rebels to help rebuild the communities that had suffered under Draxon's rule. The starborn crystal, though drained of its power, remained a symbol of hope and resilience. Sarah carried it with her wherever they went, a reminder of the bond that had saved them all. But even as they worked to heal the galaxy, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The crystal's power had been spent, but its legacy lived on in the connections they had forged, with each other, with the rebels, and with the countless lives they had touched. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck of Sanctuary, watching the stars, Jake turned to Sarah. "What's next for us?" Sarah smiled, her golden skin glowing softly in the starlight. "The galaxy is vast, Jake. There's so much we haven't seen, so much we can still do. We could explore new worlds, help those in need, or simply, be together." Jake nodded, his heart swelling with affection. "I like the sound of that. But what about your people? Your planet?" Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. "My planet is healing, thanks to the crystal's energy. My people are strong, they'll rebuild and thrive. But my place is here, with you." Jake reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I'm glad to hear that. Because I can't imagine doing this without you." Sarah's eyes sparkled with warmth. "Neither can I." A celebration of hope. A few weeks later, the rebels organized a celebration to honor their victory and to thank Jake and Sarah for their bravery. The outpost was alive with music, laughter, and the smell of food from a dozen different worlds. Rebels and refugees alike gathered to share stories, dance, and celebrate their newfound freedom. Corin stood on a makeshift stage, raising a glass to the crowd. "To Jake and Sarah, the heroes who showed us that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. May their bond inspire us all to fight for a better future." The crowd erupted into cheers, raising their glasses in a toast. Jake felt a lump in his throat as he looked out at the sea of faces, people who had once been strangers but were now like family. Sarah leaned in, her voice soft. "This is what we fought for. This is what the crystal's power was meant to protect." Jake nodded, his heart full. "And we'll keep fighting for it. Together." A new mission. As the celebration wound down, Jake and Sarah found themselves drawn to the observation deck once more. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibilities. "Where should we go first?" Jake asked, his voice filled with excitement. Sarah smiled, her eyes twinkling. "There's a planet on the edge of the galaxy, a place where the stars are said to touch the ground. I've always wanted to see it." Jake grinned. "Then that's where we'll go. But first," he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately crafted pendant. It was shaped like a star, its surface etched with delicate patterns that glowed faintly in the dark. "What's this?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with wonder. "It's a reminder," Jake said, his voice soft. "Of everything we've been through, and everything we'll face together. No matter where we go, or what challenges we meet, we'll always have each other." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she took the pendant, holding it close to her heart. "It's beautiful, Jake. Thank you." Jake smiled, his heart swelling with love. "You're my star, Sarah. My guiding light. And I'll follow you anywhere. A promise of forever." As they stood there, hand in hand, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating their love. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns, but Jake and Sarah knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. "Ready to start our next adventure?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with excitement. Jake nodded, his heart full of hope and determination. "Always." With that, they turned and walked back to their ship, ready to embark on a new journey. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibilities. And as they set off into the unknown, they knew that their love would guide them, no matter where the path led. Epilogue, a legacy of love. Years later, stories of Jake and Sarah's adventures spread across the galaxy. They became legends, not just for their bravery, but for the love that had inspired them to fight for a better future. The starborn crystal, though dormant, remained a symbol of their bond, a reminder that even in the darkest times, love could light the way. And as they traveled from world to world, helping those in need and exploring the wonders of the universe, Jake and Sarah knew that their journey was far from over. For them, every day was a new beginning, a chance to make a difference and to cherish the love that had brought them together. The stars would always guide them, and their love would always shine bright.